What up, though? What up, though? Yeah, it feels good to be home. 2012, I won the Black Male Engagement Leadership Award. 2013, got a fellowship at MIT Media Lab. I followed that up with a fellowship at Kellogg. 2014, I did a TED Talk, which was named one of the top talks of that year. Currently has over 1.3 million views. 2015, I won Manchester University Innovator of the Year Award. And then I had this little interview, Oprah, in her backyard, her rose garden. She actually said that that interview was not only one of the best in her career, but it was one of the best in her life. Think about that a little bit. A little bit. She interviewed Barack, Obama, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Mandela, Prince, Mike J. One of them had to get out of my spot. 2016, New York Times best-selling author. The book, Righting My Wrongs. But why does any of this matter? It matters because in 2010, June 22nd, I walked out of prison after serving 19 years, 7 of that in solitary confinement. It was in solitary confinement that I actually found a reason to dream. And it happened when I got this letter from my son, who was 10 at the time. In the letter, he said, "Dear Dad, my mom told me why you was in prison, for murder." He said, "Dad, don't murder again. Jesus watches what you do." It was by far the lowest point in my life. Because as a father and as a man, I realized that I had not only abandoned my son, but my son was growing up to look at me as a monster. And so in that moment, I decided that if I was ever getting out of prison or not, that I had to leave him a legacy that he could be proud of. And so I looked around my sparse cell and I said, what can you do? What can you do to leave your child a legacy to let him know that you're not this monster? And so I began to write. I began to journal and write about my experiences that led to me being in prison. See, I grew up on the east side of Detroit in a household that on the outside looking in looked like the model for black middle class America. But on the inside, what was happening, and which happened all too often in a lot of households, I was being abused. And so I ran away. At the age of 14, got sucked into the drug culture, sold drugs. At the age of 17, I was shot multiple times. Never got treated for post-traumatic stress disorder. In 16 months, I found myself in a similar conflict, and I fired 4 fatal shots that tragically caused a man's death. So as I began to journal and write about these things, I realized that there was only one thing I had at my disposal, and that was an ink pen. And it wasn't a traditional ink pen. It wasn't like the strong Bics that we're used to writing with. It was this little flimsy pen that they give you in solitary confinement. They don't want you like shanking nobody. But I took that ink pen and I rolled it up in some paper. I had a little experience rolling some things up in paper, but so I'll be judging me around here. It's regular paper. We had that, that other situation where we did. That was later on. But I rolled it up and I began to write. And I wrote my first book in like 30 days. And I took that book and I sent it to a neighbor across the hall. And when you're in solitary, you don't have access to just walk out your cell and get somebody a book, so you have to create a fish line, which was made out of like strings from my sock, toothpaste tube, and I slid it over, he pulled it in, and then I didn't hear from him. And I was like, damn, I gave him the only copy of a book that it just took me 30 days to write. Shit. But eventually, he came back to the door and he was like, man, this is the best book I ever read. And like my swagger was through the roof. I was on some Jay-Z shit up in myself, feeling myself. Then I thought about it a little bit. I'm like, well, he in solitary confinement. Might be a little bit bored. Could have like sent him like a recipe. He'd have been like, man, this is the best gravy mix ever, son. Like, it's crazy. Like, you put onions in that? Like, yeah, it's nuts. But I ended up sending my work out and started getting like national acclaim for that work. Fast forward, I'm sitting there with a book. And I'm saying to myself that I need to get this book out to the world. And I found myself extremely depressed because the moment my dream was born, I realized I was in an environment that I couldn't fully give birth to it. And so I stopped writing. And then eventually I got out of solitary in 2004. So I was in solitary from 1999 to 2004. And I remember telling the guys, I was like, man, if they ever let me out of here, because I never thought they was going to let me out of solitary. I said, if they ever let me out of here, I'm a George Jefferson stroll out the building. And literally, I stepped out that piece like, out this bitch. And I got out, and I started a publishing company with money that I saved from working in the law library, which was like one of the most balling jobs in the joint. I was making an astounding $54 a month. Balling. And so I took that money and the money that family sent and the money I hustled from the yard, and with my partner, we started a publishing company. Published my first book from prison in 2008. And then turned around and got sued by the Department of Corrections for the cost of my incarceration, which at that time totaled close to $1 million. I remember when I got that lawsuit in the mail. I remember that day because for the first time in my life I tried to do the right thing. And they attempted to take that away from me. And so I thought about it, and then I had this aha moment. I said, I work in the law library. And I realized that contractual law was binding everywhere in the world. So I wrote a contract to myself saying that I would only accept 10% of the proceeds of the book once the company recoups its production costs. And so they ended up going from suing me for 90% of $15 per book to 90% of $1.50 per book. Plus I kind of backdated the contract a little bit. No doubt. All day. And so I made sure that I didn't make any money until I got out the joint because the contract was only binding as long as I was in prison. So I get out, and then it's time to go see the parole board. I go see the parole board, 2008, they denied me, 2009, they denied me. Finally in 2010, I was released, actually June the 22nd, one day after my birthday. I got out. Yeah, I'm turning up this month too, so if y'all mess with me, you know it's going down. Let's get real. And so I walk out of prison. The first thing I do is sell a book out the trunk of a Honda Civic. Literally in the parking lot of parole office. I'm like, I gotta get this bread. Hustling from the deep, baby. That's what I do. Real talk. And so I thought that would set the standard for success, because what I realized is that with a felony, with no work history, that nobody's gonna employ me. And so I get out and I'm grinding. I'm at bookstores, I'm at hair salons, I'm at barbershops. I'm stopping people on the street, like random, like, hey, people, you want to like buy this book? And they're like, come on, weird man, get away from me. Weird dreadlock man, like, get away from me. But I'm grinding every day. But I realized that this is not enough to sustain life. I can't pay rent, I can't pay bills. But it's okay, I'm doing all right. And then I found out my girlfriend at the time, she was actually my fiance at that time, we broke up, whatever. She was pregnant. And I remember at that point, I was like, I need to get a real job, because I got another baby on the way. I've already failed too. And so I'm putting in resumes, I'm going to these interviews, I'm killing the interviews. But nobody's calling me back. I even went to a place where I got interviewed, and my friend was the CFO of the place, so I knew I was a shoo-in. And then they sent me that letter. It was like, unfortunately, we decided to go in a different direction. When I got that letter, I'm like, I need to step my game up, so now I'm looking for literary agents. I got to sell this book. And then the agent calls me. He like, man, I'm so excited about the work you're doing. I'm so excited about your writing. Fly to Boston. I fly out here to Boston. We meet. We doing shots. We drinking premium vodka and cranberry juice, which I ran out of back there. Fucking my night up. And so I just know that I'm going to be able to take care of my baby boy. A few weeks pass, and eventually I get that email. And he was like, I could really sell your book. I could sell your story if you turn it into fiction. I got that email, and I remember looking at it on my phone. And I remember this moment where I was like, I can always go back to the streets, because the streets are always hiring. But in that moment, my son's mother came downstairs, and she handed me my son. And I put the phone up, and I had to think about how I was going to make it.